What is up, everyone? In today's video, we are going to be discussing listening, but more specifically, we are going to be addressing the 4 different types of listening. So first, we are going to discuss appreciative listening. Second, we are going to discuss empathic listening. Third, we are going to discuss critical listening. And then fourth, we are going to discuss comprehensive listening. So let's go ahead and jump into our first type of listening, which is appreciative listening. So appreciative listening is listening for pleasure or enjoyment. So some examples of this would be like listening to music or listening to a podcast, listening to your favorite singer, your favorite rapper, your favorite artist, listening to a podcast that you would regularly listen to on a daily basis. Like for myself in particular, I like to listen to like murder and investigation kind of documentaries, 48 hours on OWN. Like sometimes I'll even turn on the TV and just listen while I'm washing dishes. And I really enjoy just listening to those podcasts. It gives me joy. So you might be listening to something because you enjoy it. So that is what appreciative listening is. So now that we've talked about what is appreciative listening and gave an example, let's go ahead and jump into our second type of listening, which is empathic listening. So empathic listening is listening for emotional support. So empathic sounds like empathy, and that's kind of what it's working with. It's working with empathy. You're there for emotional support. So you're not necessarily listening to respond back to a speaker's message. So let's say you are going through a very difficult hardship in your life and you reach out to a friend, and instead of them just jumping to, oh, well, you should do this or you should try to do this, like trying to resolve your problem, instead they're listening actively to you, they're shaking their head, they're asking you questions, and you just feel like they're listening for emotional support. Maybe they are in agreement with what you're saying, or they're just demonstrating to you either non-verbally, like shaking their head, asking questions, verbally or non-verbally, they're demonstrating to you, hey, I'm listening to you, I'm here for you emotionally. And some of you might be empathetic individuals where you like listening to your friends, you're there for them as much as you possibly could be. And so maybe it's a combination though. Maybe it's a combination of appreciative listening and empathic listening. Maybe you enjoy being there emotionally for other people. So as you can see, even here, there's already a combination taking place. It's not just one or the other. You could appreciatively listen while you empathically listen, but there's a difference between the two, right? Empathic listening, listening for emotional support. Appreciative listening, listening for pleasure or enjoyment, which you can do a combo of the two. Now, moving on, now that we've talked about appreciative listening as well as empathic listening, let's get into critical listening. So critical listening is listening to evaluate a speaker's message. Try to think about when you would need to evaluate a speaker's message. So some of you might be thinking, okay, maybe a political debate or maybe a persuasive speech as we do in this class, right? So you're not just going to take in information and just take it as it is. You're going to be listening to evaluate what the speaker is saying. You're not just going to like, oh, okay, this is the information that's out there in the world. Okay, let me just absorb it and that's it. No, you're really going through, you're being critical, and that's what critical listening is, right? You're evaluating what the presenter is saying. And we do this when we are listening to specifically our persuasive speeches, because you may be in agreement with them, you may be in disagreement with them, you may be in agreement with them, but disagree with something that they say. So that is what critical listening is. You are listening to evaluate a speaker's message. And again, we can see a combination. Maybe some of you really do like listening to political debates, maybe a podcast, right? And so we can see a combination taking place where maybe you're appreciative listening while also critically listening. And so now that we talked about appreciative listening, empathic listening, as well as critical listening, let's last discuss comprehensive listening. So I'm hoping that you all, at this very moment, are comprehensively listening to me. So comprehensive listening is listening to understand a speaker's message. okay? So you're listening to understand what I'm saying, hopefully. You might be critical of what I'm saying, like, was that really a good example? Does that really right? So you're not just absorbing the information, but maybe some of you are like, oh, you're teaching us what the four are. These are what the four are. These are the definitions of the four. I'm going to absorb that information so that I could do well on the quizzes, right? So those are the four different types of listening. So first we talked about what is appreciative listening, right? Appreciative listening, listening for pleasure or enjoyment. Second, we discussed empathic listening, empathy. So empathic would be listening for emotional support. Third, we talked about critical listening. And so critical listening was listening to evaluate a speaker's message. And then fourth, we discussed comprehensive listening, which is hopefully what we're doing right now, which is listening to understand a speaker's message. So maybe listening to any type of informative speech, okay, where you're trying to learn and absorb some sort of knowledge. So now that we've discussed the four different types, I hope that you have a better understanding now of the different types of listening that can take place. Remember, it can be a combination of even all four. So for every presentation, I really want you to think about what you are doing. Why are you listening to this person's presentation? Are you doing it for emotional support? Are you doing it because you really enjoy watching other people's presentations, which I hope you do? Or maybe you're listening to be critical or just understand the speaker's message. And so I will see you all in the next video. Please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and I will see you all in the next one.